Hello students, welcome back. In this class, we are basically going to discuss one of the very important thing in object-oriented programming language, that is what the access specifiers or the access modifiers. As we are saying that Java is a secured language, or whenever we are writing the code in the Java, so it is comparatively secured as compared to the other programming language. So whenever we are talking about a security, so it doesn't mean that the entire code is secured. Whereas whenever we are talking about a security aspect in Java programming or in object oriented programming language, so as a programmer, you are having the flexibility or you are having the freedom to know decide your code, that which part of your code should be accessible everywhere, which part of your code should be accessible to the particular space or particular place. So that is what the thing we are going to do in case of Java programming language. And whenever we want to decide that particular thing, we are having the concept that is called as access modifiers, right? So the access specifiers or the access modifiers are the keywords in object oriented programming language that sets the accessibility of the classes, methods and the other members. Because whenever we are writing the Java program or the object oriented programming language, so basically we are writing the classes. And whenever we are writing the classes, so basically the classes is the collection of data members and the member function. So whenever we are defining the classes and whenever we are defining the data members or the member functions, so in that we can decide the accessibility of that particular part. Means even if you are having a single data member, no, you as a programmer can decide where that particular data member should be accessible, right? And in order to achieve that, we are having the access specifiers. So as we know that whenever we are defining any data members or the member function, so we are defining like integer a. So that is what a data member. We can define the method like void input. That is the data member function. So, but in order to decide its accessibility, right? So we are having the four different types of the access specifiers or the access modifiers. No, through no. Likewise, we can define the access specifiers for the data members. Likewise, we can define the access specifiers for the member function, which will going to define its accessibility, that where that particular content will be accessible. And in Java, we are having the four different types of access specifiers, namely default, second is the private, third is the protected, and fourth is the public. Right? Now when I'm talking about the default, so let's say in the program, if I'm declaring a data member like integer a, so whenever I'm declaring a data member like integer a, so it is not preceding with any of the access specifiers that I haven't specified private, protected or public. So whenever you're not specifying any access modifier explicitly, then it becomes default, right? So by default, whenever you're not specifying any access modifier or the access specifier, it becomes default, right? Then second is the private. If suppose I'm writing integer a and before integer a if I'm giving a private, so that particular data member will become the private. Similarly protected and the public. So way we are going to define it, the way we are going to specify it, accordingly the accessibility of that particular data member or the member function will be get decided, right? So when I'm talking about a default access specifier, so there is a no keyword which is required to specify the default access specifier. As I said that if I write integer a, so as I'm not specifying public, private or protected, so by default it becomes the default. So we do not need to specify any explicit thing for it, right? Same is the case for the member function. If I'm writing a member function, let's say void add, so I'm not specifying public, private or protected before the void. So by default becomes the default one, right? So when no access modifier is specified for a class, method or a data member, it is said to be having the default access specifier, right? And default access specifiers are accessible within the same package, right? Now what is this package? Whenever we are talking about the hierarchy of the Java program, so Java program is having the hierarchy like we are having a package, right? Whereas the package is nothing but the collection of classes, right? Then that is a package. Then we are having a classes. Inside the classes we are having a data member and the member function, right? So a single package may have a multiple classes, And when I'm talking about a particular project or the particular application, a single project or a single application may have a multiple packages, and each package may have multiple classes, right? So whenever I'm talking about a default access specifier, that is what I haven't specified anything explicitly. So by default, the data members and the member function will be treated as a default one. And those default data member and the member function will be accessible within the same package. Means if that package is having a multiple classes, so those multiple classes can have the accessibility amongst each other, whereas those default content will not be accessible in another package, right? So we are going to say this thing practically afterwards. That is what after, immediately after this particular explanation. And second, we are having the private access specifier. The name itself indicates private, right? That is what it is, like ownership. So whenever I am declaring anything as a private, so I am having a ownership on that particular thing, and I do not want to share that particular stuff with anyone else, right? So whenever we want to keep the things confidential, or we want to maintain the secrecy or the privacy, in that case we use the private access specifier, right? And in order to no, give the private access specifier, we use the keyword private. Whereas no, we can make the data members as well as the member function as an private, right? And whenever we are declaring the data members or the member function as a private, no, we are just restricting its accessibility, that those data members and the member function will be accessible within that particular class only, in which they are declared as a private, right? Any other class of the same package or of some different package will not be able to access those data members and the member function. If you try to access those, you will get an error, right? Whereas classes or interface cannot be declared as a private, because we want that the classes to be accessible, right? Because the class is nothing but the part of your project, and that will be required anywhere in the project. So that is the reason whenever we are talking about a classes or interface, we do not declare it as a private, right? Then third we are having, that is a protected, right? Protected is what, a bit no, where we can no provide a much more accessibility compared to private, because private is quite restrictive, that is not going to have the access other than the class in which we are defining it. Whereas if you want to increase the accessibility, let's say if I am defining certain things, and if I want that thing to be no accessible in another class, I'm just talking about a simple example of the vehicles, right? When I'm talking about a car, so car is owned by the particular person. Let's say I am owning a car. So that is what my private property. So in that, I will only go. I will not take the passengers with me, because that is the private stuff. So that is how, that is a private. But when I'm talking about Ola and Uber, right? So in Ola and Uber, no, the people to whom I will provide the access, that I will say that this passenger can come, this passenger can come, this passenger can come. So those passengers can travel in my particular vehicle. So that way you can say it is a protected, because I am providing the permission to those people, right? Those who I want that those people should travel. That is what it, depending upon the permission. That is what, if I'm do not giving the permission, the people cannot travel in my vehicle. That is what the protected. Whereas when I'm talking about a public, like the bus or railway or anything like that, is a public transport. So in which all the people or all the thing, all the persons can travel without seeking for the permission, right? So that is how it is public, right? So protected access specifier is specified using the keyword protected. The methods or the data members can be declared as protected, and whenever we are declaring the methods or the data members as a protected, it will be accessible within that particular class, and also it will be accessible within the number of classes which is the part of the same package, or if suppose any class is derived from that particular class, so that particular class can also access those particular protected data members and the member function. And finally we are having the public, and the public is having the widest scope, that it can access within the same package, it can access within the different package or anywhere in the particular project or particular program, right? There is a no restriction on the scope of the public data members, right? So this is what a simple no tabular format that with accessibility. Now let's jump to the Eclipse in order to just prove the things which you are discussed. And let's say I'm creating one more project in order to prove the access specifiers, right? And let's say I'm just giving the name to the project as demo access. Fine. So that will give me the clarity actually. So demo access, and I'm just creating the project. So you can see that the project is get created. And as I said that whenever we are creating the project or real-time application in Java, so your project or the application may consisting of different package, right? So just for the sake of understanding the concept of access specifier, I'm just creating the package, right? So let's say I'm just creating one package which is having the name as package 1, right? And I'm also creating one more package, right, in order to have the different packages within the same project. So let's say I'm creating one more package and I'm giving the name it as a package 2, right? So now we can see that in my particular project, that is the demo access, I'm having the two different package, namely package 1 and package 2. So project can have the multiple packages, and multiple packages or a package can have the multiple classes. So likewise, what I'm on a package 1, I am creating the two different classes, right? So let's me create some classes inside the package 1. So let's I'm saying that class 1, right? So now you can see that the class 1 is created inside the package 1, and let's say I'm just creating one more class inside this package 1, and I'm just giving the name to this as a class 2, right? So now you can see that my project name is demo access. Inside the demo access I'm having the two package 1 and package 2. Inside the package 1 I'm having the two classes, class 1 and class 2. And likewise, let me create one more class inside the package 2 as well. No, so let me create one class. I'm just giving the name as a class 3, right? So now the structure is quite complete, that I'm having the project, I'm having the packages having certain classes. And now let's move towards the actual part, right? So by default these classes are public, right? And what I'm doing is, let me create one method that is, let's say, public void, and I'm giving this method name as method 1, right? So I have declared one method that is a public, and let me define the definition of it, right? And inside the definition I'm simply writing one SOP statement, that is system.out.println, and here I'm printing the message that in order to just have the better understanding, I'm just simply writing that this is the class 1 method. Fine, so hope it is clear, right? And in order to execute it, I'm just creating one main method, that is public static void main, right? Here I'm passing the string and I'm passing the arguments, right? And what I will doing is, I'll be creating the object for the class 1. So class 1, I'm creating the object as C1. It's your choice that which class name you want to declare. And here I will be calling the constructor of class 1 in order to invoke the content of the class. And yes, that's it, right? And how I'm going to access, yes, it's class 1. How I'm going to access the method 1, that is object name dot method, and that is object dot method 1, right? So this is perfect, right? Now it is accessible, right? Because it is the same class, I'm creating the object in the same class, and likewise I'm doing it, right? If suppose now I'm just creating one more method inside the class 2, right? And whereas I'm giving this method name as method 2, fine, and here I'm just printing the statement as it is a class 2 method. And now you can see that inside the class 2 as well, I can create the object for the class 1, right? And let me repeat the same thing inside the class 3 as well. As you can see that this class 3 belongs to the package 2, right? So what I'm doing is, I'm just creating a package 3, and I'm just giving the name as a method 3, and here I'm specifying it is a method from the class 3. And you can see that here as well you can have can I have the c1 dot method 3? Let me check. Method 3, can I access it? Can I access it? No, you cannot, because we are not having access to this, because there is no relationship between the class 1 and class 3. But you can see that if suppose I'm running this class 1, We'll just check the output. That is, we are having the output as it is executing actually. Yes, this is a class 1 method. We are getting the output. If I'm running the class 2, we are getting the output as a class 1. If I'm running the class 3, so it is also having no class 1 method, right? So now what we can see is that the class 1 is accessible everywhere. That we can create the object of class 1 inside the class 2, we can create the object of class 1 inside the class 3. Means what we can say that the public class and the public method is accessible within the same package as well as outside the package, that is in the different package, right? So that is what the accessibility of the public, right? As we have said that public is having a widest accessibility, that it can accessible anywhere, that is within the same package as well as within the different package, right? So now if suppose, right, if suppose I'm just removing this public keyword from the class, right? So if suppose I'm just removing this public, so now what type of class is this? What is the accessibility of this? Yes, as we said that if you do not specify the access specifier explicitly, so then by default it becomes the default. So now my class 1 is a default class, right? And now if I see, you can see that now it is okay in the class 1 and the class 2 because this class 1 and class 2 belonging to the same package. And when I move to the class 3, now you can see that there is a problem, right? There is a problem because I cannot access the class 1 inside the class 3 because this class 3 belongs to the another package. So what we can conclude from this, that default class is having the accessibility within the same package, right? That default class can access within the same package, whereas default class cannot access in a different package, right? As we can see that there is a error, right? And if suppose if I want to remove this particular error, and let's say if I'm just preceding this particular class with the public, so now you can see that the error is removed, right? So that is what the public class and the default class means, right? So whenever we are talking about the classes, so we basically use the two different types of access specifiers. The very first we use, that is the public access specifier, and second we use, that is the default. Whereas public is having the accessibility within the same package as well as within the different package, whereas the accessibility of the default is within that particular package only, it cannot be accessible outside the package, right? Likewise, now we can have the access specifier for the data members and the member function. So what I'm doing is, now I'm just simply removing the public from the method, right? So the moment I remove the public, so now it becomes the default method, right? And as we said that the default method is again having the accessibility within the same package. And if I just simply move to the another package, that is class 3, so now you can see that there is a problem in accessing the method 1 because your earlier method 1 was public. So as it was the public, so accessibility was okay, that it can accessible within the same package as well as the different package. But the moment I convert this to the default, now you can see that the default method cannot be accessible outside the package, that it cannot be accessible in different package, right? So that is what the accessibility of the default method, right? And again, if I want to remove this particular error, I have to make this method as a public. Now you can see that this is accessible, right? The error is removed. Fine. Now likewise, let me define some data members. So let me defining int x equals to 20, right? So again, I haven't specified any access modifier before the integer. So yes, of course it becomes what? It is nothing but default one, right? And let me write system.out.println, sorry, system.out.println. We'll just check the accessibility of it. I'm just trying to access the x, so c1.x, fine, and I will just put the semicolon. So yes, it is accessible here. And let me try to access the same data members in a different class of the same package. So you can see that it is accessible. And now if I want to access it on the in the different package of the same project, so you can see that there is an error, right? Whereas if I'm running the class 1, it is running perfectly, that I'm getting the output as, yes, it is is not executing. Yes, I'm getting this is the class 1 method, and also we are getting the values of the data member. If I execute the class 2, again no, let me check the output. Yes, again we are having this is a class 1 method and we are getting the output as 20, whereas the default data member is not accessible here, right? And if I want to access this data member inside another package, so I need to make it as a public, right? So now if I change this data member to the public, now you can see that the error is removed, right? So now it is accessible inside the class 3 as well. So we'll be getting the output as this is a class 1 method and we are getting the output as 20, right? So if you understand what do you mean by public, right? Let me define one more data member, right? Let's say public, or let's say I'm just defining one member function, okay? So this is, let's say, private, or I will just initially take it as a void, and let's say this belongs to the class 1 and I'm defining it as a method 1 fine. And again here I'll be defining this particular thing, and again in order to define it I'm just copying this particular statement and I'm just pasting this, and I will be saying that this is the class 1 second method, right? And I'll be saying it as a class 1 first method, right? So that is perfect. And now when I'm talking about this particular method, this method is a default one, and let me check what will happen if I just make it as a private one, right? So I'm just making it as a private, and I will try to access is that as c1 dot method dot 11, right? So you can see that it is accessible. Now if I try to execute this, yes, we are getting the output, that is the first method, second method, right? Now what I'm trying to do is I will just try to access the same method inside the another class of the same package, right? And if I just try to access it, now you will be getting the error that private method is not accessible. Let's change the visibility of method 11. Why it is not accessible? Because we have defined this method 11 as a private, right? And as we said that private can be accessible only within that particular class, right? It will not be accessible in the derived class, it will not be accessible in another class of the same package, and also as it is not accessible within the same package, so of course it will not be accessible in another package, right? If you try to access, it will not be accessible, right? So this is what the scope of private, right? And now if suppose I'm replacing the private with the protected, now we'll check, right? As we said that protected will be accessible within the same class as well as in the different class of the same package. So if I try to execute it, so yes, it is running perfectly fine. And the error which was encountered in the class 2 when we declared as a private, so you can see that that error is removed. It is not removed, c1 method 1, right? So it is not accessible. And if I say that extends, that is what I'm saying, that key this class 2 is derived from class 1. So if I write the class 1 extends, right? So now you can see that that error is removed. Means protected data member or the member function is accessible within the method in which we are defined it, and also it is accessible in the class which is derived from that particular class. And now if I try to execute this particular code, now we'll check the output. Yes, it is accessible, right? Whereas protected is not accessible in outside the, and let's me just try this extends class 1, right? So you can see that the error is still remains because the protected data member is having the visibility within the same package, that it cannot be accessed in another package of the same project. That in order to access the protected data member or the member function, we have to make sure that we are trying to access it within the same package, right? So this is what regarding the access specifiers, right? We try to demonstrate the access specifier with the help of some program, right? So I guess it is clear. So that's it for this particular class. See you in the next class with the different types of inheritance in Java. So yes, thank you so much. See you in the next class.